I returned early from my business trip, finding my bedsheet still warm. On the nightstand sat a strange hair tie, smelling sharply of eucalyptus. When I asked, my stepmother said, "My yoga instructor just slept there." Then she struck my cheekbone to silence me. They thought I'd stay quiet, but I handle ethics and risk at Everline Naturals, where everything leaves a trace. That night, I began collecting the evidence. I don't need to lash out. I use the light. My name is Ava Merritt, and I am 28 years old. I pushed the solid oak door of my Norford apartment open, the hinges sighing quietly. The flight from Chicago had been turbulent, the air in the cabin recycled and stale, and the 2-hour drive from the airport left a gritty film of exhaustion on my skin. All I wanted was a scalding shower and the sterile silence of my own space. The silence was there, but it was wrong. It was a heavy, occupied silence. I dropped my briefcase by the door. The sound muffled by the entryway runner. The apartment's main lights were off, but a low, intimate glow spilled from the bedroom down the hall. It was the reading mode on the smart lighting system, a setting I only ever used myself. My heart didn't race. It did the opposite. It seemed to thicken, pumping ice through my veins. I walked toward the bedroom, my stocking feet whispering on the hardwood. The room was empty, but the bed was a disaster. The heavy linen duvet was thrown back, pooled on the floor. The top sheet, my 800 thread count Egyptian cotton sheet, was twisted, pulled almost entirely free from the mattress corner. It was wrinkled with a specific, frantic energy. Then the smell hit me. It wasn't my lavender and sandalwood. It was sharp, medicinal, and invasive. Eucalyptus. Beneath it, the unmistakable acrid tang of male sweat. It was not the scent of my ex-fiancé, a scent I had scrubbed from this apartment 6 months ago. This was new. This was an intruder. My gaze snapped to the nightstand, the first piece of physical evidence, a single, thick black hair tie. It wasn't mine. My hair is too fine for one that heavy. Next to it, my water glass. I always left it empty. It was now half full, and clinging to the rim was a greasy, perfect crescent of lipstick. The color was rosewood, a deep, confident shade. Marla's shade. The air in the room became unbreathable. She was here. My training took over. The panic that wanted to rise in my throat was immediately suppressed, replaced by the cold, clean click of process. I pulled out my phone. My fingers didn't shake. I bypassed my texts and opened the Schlaga app for my smart lock. The log was pristine, clinical, Ava Merritt, keypad, 2214. That was me, just now. Guest code, Dane, yoga, keypad, 1914. Dane, yoga. I had created that guest code 2 weeks ago at Marla's request, programmed to expire in 30 days. For my yoga instructor, she'd said. He needs to drop off some new wellness materials for the Everline event. I had thought it was odd, asking for access to my apartment, not the condo she shared with my father 2 floors above, but I had complied, a gesture of family goodwill. 1914. 3 hours ago, I was in the air, somewhere over Pennsylvania. My laptop balanced on my knees as I finalized a risk assessment report, and he was here, in my bed. And the lipstick confirmed Marla was here with him. My blood ran cold, but my mind was hot, cataloging the smell, the sheet, the hair tie, the lipstick, the digital log. I backed out of the bedroom, not touching the light switch. I didn't want to contaminate the scene. My fingers moved across the phone screen, opening my text messages. I navigated to my father. My thumb hovered. The message simple. Who is here? I hit send. The reply was almost instantaneous, but it wasn't from him. The bubble that popped up was Marla's. She must have his phone. It's nothing. My yoga instructor just slept there for a bit. Don't make a scene, Ava. Slept there. The euphemism was so blatant, so dismissive. It was almost impressive. Don't make a scene, a command, an attempt to minimize, to gaslight, to erase the violation. The implication was clear. I was the child. She was the adult, and this was none of my business. But it was my bed. It was my apartment. And my ethics and risk training screamed that this wasn't just infidelity. It was a breach of corporate policy. I opened the last app, the Eufy security camera mounted outside my front door. I scrubbed the timeline. 19 teen. Nothing. He must have covered the lens or used the service entrance. But departure. Yes. 2102. A man stepped out of my apartment. The infrared camera bleached him in shades of gray. But he was tall, athletic. He pulled the door shut, glanced down the hall, and turned toward the elevator. As he turned, the light from the hallway fixture caught the logo on his chest. He was wearing an Everline Wellness Week hoodie. My company, my event. He was a vendor. He was Dane Yoga, and he was sleeping with the acting CEO in her stepdaughter's bed, on company time, wearing company merchandise. The full scope of the liability, the conflict of interest, the sheer brazen arrogance of it, settled on me. I heard a floorboard creak behind me. I turned. Marla stood in the hallway, illuminated by the reading light spilling from my bedroom. She was wearing her silk robe, the rosewood lipstick slightly smeared. Her expression wasn't apologetic, it was annoyed, bothered, as if I were an interruption. "I told you not to make a scene," she said, her voice low and tight. "You let him use my bed," I stated. It wasn't an accusation, it was a data point. "It's just a bed. Ava, you're being dramatic." "He's a company vendor. Marla, you used a guest pass I issued at your request to conduct a personal relationship in my home, with a man wearing company property." Her eyes narrowed. The annoyance flashed into something hotter. "You and your process," she hissed. "You and your rules. You think you run the company?" "I run ethics and risk, and this is a catastrophic risk." "This is family," she shot back, stepping toward me. "And you are just a little girl who needs to learn her place. You will not mention this to your father. You will not mention this to anyone." I can't ignore a material conflict of interest. The sound cracked through the apartment. It wasn't a slap. It was a strike, her open palm, heavy with her rings, connected with my left cheekbone. My head snapped back. The pain was immediate. A bright, blinding flash. My eye instantly teared up. A hot, stinging sensation as if acid had been thrown in my face. The skin on my cheek throbbed. A deep, bruising ache that radiated directly into my skull. I stumbled back, catching myself on the hallway table. The silence that followed was absolute. Marla stood there, her hands still slightly raised, her chest heaving. She looked shocked at her own action for a split second, before her face hardened again, solidifying into a mask of cold authority. "This stays between us," she ordered. I didn't say a word. I held her gaze for one precise, calculated second. Then, I turned, walked into the master bathroom, and locked the door. The shock was a physical wave, threatening to make me sick. The burning on my face was a tangible thing. I looked in the mirror. The red handprint was already blooming, swelling the skin under my eye into a tight, shiny puff. I took a deep breath, and I went to work. My hand was shaking now, but not from fear. It was adrenaline. The process was everything. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I swiped to the utilities folder and opened voice memos. I pressed the red circle. My voice came out low, but perfectly steady. "The date is October 23rd. The time is 22:41. I am Ava Merritt, in my primary residence apartment 14B at the Norford. I have just been physically assaulted by my stepmother, Marla Merritt." I began to describe the injury in clinical detail, my voice a flat monotone. "Blunt force trauma to the left zygomatic bone, impact delivered via an open right hand, immediate swelling, intense stinging sensation in the left eye, and a visible, defined red contusion matching the shape of a hand." I stopped the recording, saved it, emailed it to my secure, private email address with the subject line, "Documentation 2241. I was creating the chain. Next, the physical evidence. I looked at my reflection. The woman in the mirror was pale, with a rapidly bruising face, but her eyes were not the eyes of a victim. They were the eyes of a compliance officer building a case. I left the locked bathroom and went back to the bedroom. Marla was gone. I could hear the distant thud of the elevator being called in the hall. She had fled back to her own apartment. Good. I walked to the bed. I didn't touch the sheets. I carefully removed the pillowcase from the pillow he had used, the one that smelled strongest of eucalyptus and sweat. I took it into the kitchen. From under the sink, I retrieved a box of 2.5-gallon Ziploc evidence bags. I kept them for work, for sensitive document transfers. I carefully folded the pillowcase, forcing the contaminated air out, and placed it inside the bag. I sealed the Ziploc, pressing it flat. I took a black Sharpie from the utility drawer. On the bag's white label, I wrote, Item 001, pillowcase, linen. Location, 14B Norford. Primary bedroom. Date, 10/23. Time, 22:45. Collected by A. Merritt. I did the same for the black hair tie, Item 002, and the rosewood lipstick-stained water glass, Item 003. Bagging each separately. I placed all 3 sealed bags in my fireproof briefcase. This was my temporary chain of custody. My cheek was on fire. The swelling was worse, pulling the skin tight under my eye. I needed a third-party report. I needed medical documentation. I sat at my kitchen counter, the cold marble a shock against my elbows. I opened my texts. I didn't call my father. I didn't call the police. This was not a domestic dispute. This was an assault, and it was connected to a corporate malfeasance. It had to be handled with precision. I scrolled to a colleague, a supervising nurse at the downtown urgent care, who had helped me review employee compensation claims. My text was brief, no emotion, pure logistics. Sarah, I need an official medical report tonight. I've sustained a facial injury. I need photos taken of the trauma, a full description of the contusion, and a signed physician's report time-stamped, I am on my way now. I hit send. I stood up, grabbed my car keys, and walked out of my apartment, leaving the violated bed, the faint smell of eucalyptus, and the intimate reading light exactly as they were. The investigation had begun. The fluorescent light of the urgent care examination room was an aggressive, sterile white, bleaching all color from the world. It was the color of absolute, clinical truth. It hummed, a low electric vibration that seemed to buzz in time with the throb in my cheek. This is going to be cold. Sarah, the nurse, said gently. She wasn't my colleague tonight. She was my provider. She pressed a small, crackling ice pack against my face. The cold was a relief, a sharp counterpoint to the deep, volcanic ache. Hold that steady. The doctor will be in to sign off in a minute. I nodded, the movement tight. I looked past her at the generic poster on the wall detailing the human muscular system. Everything was clean, labeled, organized. This was my world, a world of facts. My world was a violent contrast to the other world I inhabited, the one Marla and my father had built. Everline Naturals is a monument to aspirational living. My father, Arthur Merritt, founded it 20 years ago on a simple, marketable premise: pure ingredients, transparent sourcing. We were the healthy food company that became a wellness lifestyle brand. We sold organic acai powders, cold-pressed juices, and the pervasive, comforting lie of attainable purity. Our headquarters in Grayford is a testament to this lie. The lobby is a cathedral of reclaimed wood and glass, dominated by a 10-foot living wall of moss, and opposite the moss, taking up the entire expanse of polished concrete, is the legacy wall. It's the company's public-facing family album. It's supposed to document our history, our journey, but the history is curated. My mother, who helped my father bottle his first juices in their garage, is relegated to a single, small, black and white photo in the corner. The centerpiece, the sun in this corporate solar system, is a massive backlit photograph of my father and Marla on their wedding day, 5 years ago. He looks relieved, almost boyish. She is radiant, her hand placed proprietary on his chest, her smile aimed not at him, but at the camera, at the audience. Surrounding this shrine are framed articles, plaques, and magazine covers. Forbes praising our innovative market strategy, the Norfolk County Gazette celebrating the seamless leadership transition, when my father stepped back and Marla, his new wife, was appointed acting CEO. My favorite was a glossy spread in a local lifestyle magazine, the headline proclaiming, "The harmonious family behind America's purest brand." I stared at the anatomy chart in the exam room, the ice pack dripping cold water onto my collar. That harmonious family had just split my cheekbone. I didn't enter this world as royalty. I came in through the service entrance. After I finally finished college, a year late, thanks to the scholarship I'd lost, I applied for an internship in the procurement department. I kept my head down. I learned the systems. I learned the supply chains, the invoices, the weaknesses. I saw where the money leaked. I was promoted. I wrote my first risk assessment report on my own time. I proposed the creation of a department that hadn't existed, ethics and risk. My father, impressed by the initiative and the documented potential savings, approved it. I built the department from scratch. I wrote the whistleblower policy. I implemented the 3-tier vendor verification system. I became the internal auditor, the digital detective, the one who checked the receipts. Now, I am the head of ethics and risk, and I am a joke to Marla. "Here comes the process girl," she'd said just last week, her voice dripping with dismissive amusement as I entered the boardroom. The VPs chuckled dutifully. "Ava, darling, we're trying to innovate, not get buried in your spreadsheets." I had presented a quarterly risk summary. My last item was about the Wellness Week budget, and about him. "This new vendor, Graywell Movement, has submitted invoices that are out of policy," I said, my voice even. "The contract is structured as a series of short-term retainers, all falling just below the $10,000 threshold that requires a full board review. He's a therapeutic yoga specialist, Ava, not a defense contractor," Marla had countered, waving a dismissive hand. "He's Dane. He's wonderful." Dane. He had been introduced at an all-hands meeting 2 months prior. Marla brought him on stage, praising his revolutionary Graywell method of therapeutic breathing. He was charismatic, in that aggressively calm wellness guru way. He wore linen. He told the staff they were seen. The HR department adored him. He gave free deep breathing for corporate stress classes in the atrium at lunchtime. The reservation list was always full. In the background, the procurement department, acting on direct orders from the CEO's office, kept signing the checks. One package for executive meditation, another for mindful sourcing consultation. Vague, expensive, continuous. I am still formally requesting a full due diligence packet on Graywell Movement. I'd insisted in that boardroom meeting. "We have no TIN on file, no certificate of insurance, and the address listed is a commercial mail drop." The room went silent. You don't challenge the acting CEO, especially when she's also the founder's wife. Marla's smile tightened, the rosewood lipstick looking painted on. "Thank you for your diligence. Ava, I'll take it from here." Later, I received a one-line email from her, a direct note that bypassed my ticketing system. "No formalities needed for this. Dane is a personal partner. Consider the matter closed." A personal partner. I had interpreted it as a friendship, a crony hire. I logged it as a potential conflict of interest and began a low-level file. I hadn't understood the full, literal meaning of her words, not until tonight, not until I smelled the eucalyptus in my own bed. The doctor entered, a young resident with tired eyes. He glanced at the chart, then at my face. His professionalism was a shield. "Ms. Merritt, that looks painful. I'm Dr. Allister." He gently took the ice pack. His fingers probed the bone beneath the swelling. I winced, a sharp intake of breath. "Definite contusion to the zygomatic arch," he murmured, "and a periorbital hematoma developing. We'll mark it as assault. Sarah, did you get the shots?" "Yes, doctor. 4 angles, with the timestamp." "Good. We'll get you the official report for your records." Do you want us to call Norford PD? No, I said, my voice hoarse. Not yet. I just need the documentation, the chain of evidence. He nodded, not questioning. He'd seen this before. He signed the report with a flourish, added the ICD-10 code, S083XA, contusion of other part of head, initial encounter, and handed me the hard copy. Keep ice on it, 20 minutes on, 20 minutes off. I clutched the paper. It felt more real than the pain. My father is not a bad man. He is, perhaps worse, a weak one. He is a man who built an empire on the concept of purity and now cannot bear to look at any of the dirt. He avoids conflict at all costs. His corporate motto, and his family one, is, "Don't disrupt the peace." He lets Marla manage the budgets, like the ballooning wellness week, because he doesn't want to have the fight. He lets her call the shots, promote her friends, and silence dissent because he is terrified of the quiet, simmering anger she wields. He mistakes her control for stability. He mistakes my silence for agreement. He doesn't see the rot. 2 weeks ago, we had our obligatory Sunday family dinner. It's a performance. Marla, my father, and I, in their sterile high-rise condo, pretending we are the family from the legacy wall. I had mentioned a new compliance software I wanted to purchase. Marla set her wine glass down, the click against the stone table loud in the quiet room. More process. Ava, more rules? She looked at my father, then back at me, her smile a thin painted line. Your father built this company on intuition, on passion. You can't spreadsheet your way to success. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a confidential, condescending purr. A smart daughter knows how to adjust her own ego for the good of the family. You should try it. It was a threat, wrapped in silk. Back off. Stop digging. Know your place. My father busied himself with his napkin, his eyes fixed on his plate. Don't disrupt the peace. I smiled, a tight, brief smile that didn't reach my eyes. Thank you for the advice, Marla. I'll take that under consideration. Later that night, in my own apartment, my safe apartment, I opened the encrypted file on my laptop labeled Statements Log. It was a simple text file, a running record of quotes, dates, and times. I typed 09 to 28, 2015, family dinner, M. Merritt. A smart daughter knows how to adjust her own ego for the good of the family. Context: compliance software vendor oversight. It was just one more entry in a long list, one more piece of data, one more drop of fuel for a fire I hadn't yet decided to light. I sat in my car in the urgent care parking lot, the signed medical report on the passenger seat. The legacy wall at Grayford showed a sparkling, harmonious family, bathed in professional lighting. The paper next to me showed the truth. A clinical description of a bruise, an ICD-10 code for violence, and a physician's signature, all time-stamped 2308. The outside glittered, the inside was falling apart. Everline Naturals was sick, and the sickness had just become physical, transferring from the corporate body to mine. I started the car. The dashboard lit up, illuminating my face in the rearview mirror. The swelling was worse, the skin a mottled purple and red. I looked like a walking claim, and I was. I returned to my apartment at 0014. The silence was heavy, unchanged. The scent of eucalyptus had faded, but the violation lingered in the air like a stain. My face was a taut, throbbing mask, the ice pack from the car now just a lukewarm bag of water. I threw it in the sink. There was no time for pain. There was only the process. I walked to my home office, a small, organized space off the living room. I turned on my scanner, the high-pitched whine filling the quiet. I took the medical report from my bag. Urgent care, 2308, ICD-10, SO.83XA, signed, Dr. Allister. This was the cornerstone. This was item 004. I scanned the document, the light bar sliding slowly, capturing the physician's signature, the timestamp, the clinical description of the trauma. I saved the file as a PDF. Merritt, Medical, 623.pdf. Next, I connected my phone to my secure dock. Sarah had texted me the photos, as requested, from the clinic's official device to my secure email. 4 images, high resolution, captured under the unforgiving fluorescent light. They were brutal. They showed the precise, angry imprint of Marla's hand, the swelling already distorting the line of my cheekbone, the broken capillaries blooming under the skin. I saved them. Trauma. Angle 1.2309.jpg. Trauma. Angle 2.2309.jpg. I moved all the digital files, the scan, the 4 photos, into an encrypted volume on my personal network-attached storage. This drive was air-gapped from the Everline network. It was my private digital vault. But digital wasn't enough. Redundancy is the heart of risk management. I opened the image files and printed a hard copy of each. The printer whirred, spitting out the images of my own face. They felt like evidence from a stranger's file. I turned each photo over, on the back, in black archival ink. I wrote the date, the time, 2309, and my signature. I added these prints to the folder containing the original medical report. Next, the physical evidence. I retrieved the 3 sealed Ziploc bags from my briefcase. Item 001, pillowcase. Item 002, hair tie. Item 003, water glass. I walked to the built-in closet in my office, behind a false panel holding spare binders. I keyed the code for my personal fireproof safe. I placed the bags inside, laying them flat. They looked sterile and strange next to my passport and my grandmother's jewelry. I added the folder containing the original medical report and the time-stamped photos. I closed the heavy door and spun the lock. The chain of custody for the physical items was now secure. I returned to my desk, the throbbing in my face a dull metronome. It was time for the data. I opened my text messages, the exchange with Marla, her admission. It's nothing. My yoga instructor just slept there for a bit. Don't make a scene. Ava. I took a series of scrolling screenshots, capturing the entire conversation, including my initial text to my father. I checked the metadata on her incoming message. Received 2211. A perfect, independent timestamp. I saved the images. Item 005, digital admission, text 2211, PNG. I uploaded this to the encrypted vault. Next, the voice memo, the one I recorded in the bathroom. I airdropped the file to my laptop. Documentation 2241.4a. I listened to it once. My voice was chillingly calm, detailing the assault as the pain bloomed. It was the sound of pure, controlled process. I added it to the vault. Now the access logs. This was simple. This was clean. This was my property. I logged into my Schlag account online. I exported the complete access log for my apartment for the last 72 hours. It was a clean CSV file. I highlighted the 2 relevant lines. 1914, guest code. Dane, yoga, access granted. 2214, Ava Merritt, access granted. I saved the file. Item 006, locklog, 11023.csv. I did the same with my UFE doorbell camera account. I downloaded the high-definition video file, 2102, the man in the Everline hoodie, walking away. The file was large, 280 MB. I labeled it Item 007, camera log. 4. Both files were added to the vault. My legal right to this data was indisputable. The next part was more delicate. I was now moving from my personal space to the corporate one. I had to be immaculate. Any misstep, any unauthorized access, would invalidate my entire case and open me up for termination. I would not hack. I would not breach my own policies. I would use the front door, with my own keys. I opened my Everline email. I navigated to the shared inbox for the Wellness Week Committee. As head of ethics and risk, I was an administrator on the account, tasked with overseeing vendor communications and potential liabilities. This was my job. I typed Dane into the search bar. The inbox was full of logistics, class schedules, and invoices. Then I typed Uber. It was there, an email from 3 weeks ago. Dane Garver had accidentally emailed the shared inbox instead of the accounting clerk. The subject was Travel Reimbursement. Attached was a PDF receipt. I clicked, my heart hammered. Just once, an Uber ride from a residential address in Norwood to the Grayford headquarters. The charge, $88.50. The payment method, Everline Corporate Amex, the one issued to Marla Merritt. He wasn't just using her, he was billing us for the privilege. I downloaded the receipt, item 008, Uber, receipt, card, PDF. I added it to the vault. Now for the main file, the contract. I did not browse the company's shared drive. I did not access the finance server. I opened the internal compliance portal, the very system I had helped design. I logged in with my credentials. I clicked File New Request. Requester, Ava Merritt, Head of Ethics and Risk. Subject, Tier 2 Vendor Audit, Routine. Vendor Name, Graywell Movement. Dane Graywell Request. Details. Pursuant to Ethics, Policy 4.1a, Vendor Verification. The Risk Department requires a complete file for the aforementioned vendor. Please provide copies of all signed contracts, all submitted invoices, proof of insurance, and the original supplier onboarding form, SOF1, from procurement. This is for a routine end-of-quarter risk review. I submitted the form. It generated a ticket number, RR4591. The request was routed directly to the procurement department and the general counsel's office. It was official. It was documented. It was completely, utterly defensible. They had 48 hours to comply. Per my own service-level agreement, I was not a woman scorned. I was a department head doing my job. With the corporate request filed, I took the most important step. I could not investigate this myself. I was now a material witness and a victim. To proceed alone would be a breach of the very ethics I was trying to enforce. I opened a private browser window. I typed in the URL for the third-party whistleblower hotline Everline used. It was hosted by an external company, Navex Global. It was completely anonymous. I clicked File a new report, report type, conflict of interest and financial misconduct. Location, Grayford HQ, CEO's office, individuals, involved. Marla Merritt, acting CEO. Dane Graywell, vendor. In the summary box, I did not mention the assault. I did not mention my apartment. I kept it sterile. Summary. I have reason to believe a material conflict of interest exists between the acting CEO and a vendor known as Dane Graywell, DBA Graywell Movement. This vendor appears to be in a personal, intimate relationship with the CEO. This relationship has resulted in non-standard contract approvals, circumvention of payment thresholds, and billing irregularities, including the use of a corporate card for personal expenses, see Uber. This vendor's invoices may be fraudulent and represent a significant financial and reputational risk to Everline Naturals. I did not upload any evidence, not yet. I was simply opening the door, creating the container. I clicked Submit. The screen refreshed. Thank you. Your report has been submitted. Your reference number is 771EWG. Please check back in 48 hours for updates from the case manager. I wrote the number down on a physical piece of paper, 771EWG. This number was my shield. My work was almost done. I aggregated all my digital files, the medical scans, the photos, the text admission, the audio file, the logs, the Uber receipt, into a single zip folder. I named it Case 3. Internal. I compressed it and applied AES 256 encryption. The password was a 24-character alphanumeric string I had memorized from a previous case. I took 2 new, sterile USB 3.0 drives from my desk drawer. I copied the encrypted file to both. The first USB drive went into the fireproof safe, next to the physical evidence. The second USB drive, I placed in a small, padded envelope. I took a legal documents, privileged and confidential sticker from my desk and sealed the envelope with it. I addressed it to my private attorney, the one I kept on retainer for my personal trust. I would drop it at her office's mail slot on my way in the morning. A dead drop. An insurance policy. My entire body ached. The adrenaline was gone, leaving a hollow, vibrating exhaustion. The pain in my face was a constant, blinding throb. One last thing. I opened my personal calendar. I created a new appointment for 48 hours from now. Friday afternoon. Event. Follow-up with Dr. Peterson, PCP. Notes. Follow-up documentation for facial trauma. Biological color change. A bruise is a living document. It changes color. It tells a story in stages. Yellow, green, purple. A follow-up visit would provide a second, independent medical report documenting the age of the injury. It would be another timestamp, another fact, another nail. I shut down my laptop. The apartment was dark. I had not turned on a single light, save for the scanner. I sat in the dark, my face in my hands, the skin screaming at my touch. I had not shed a tear. I had not raised my voice. I had simply collected the data. Marla and Dane had been sloppy. They had lit a match in a room full of accelerant. I was the fire extinguisher. I was the carbon dioxide blast that sucked all the air out of the room. There would be no blood, no messy confrontation. Just the cold, clean, suffocating precision of the truth. The email arrived at my Everline terminal at 0852. The morning after the assault. My left eye was a swollen, grotesque slit, a vibrant tapestry of purple and yellow that no amount of concealer could hide. I wore it to the office as a badge. Let them look. The subject line was simple. Request fulfilled. RR 4591. Vendor audit, Graywell movement. Procurement had been efficient. Attached was a 28-page scanned PDF, the complete file. I didn't open it immediately. I went to the kitchenette and brewed a black coffee. The bitterness of familiar comfort. I held the hot ceramic mug against my unbruised cheek. I was creating a new chain of custody, the one that would unmask the man who had slept in my bed. I returned to my desk, locked my office door, and opened the file. The contract itself was thin, a simple 2-page service agreement. It was exactly as the outline had described. This agreement is made between Everline Naturals, Inc., and Dane Graywell, DBA Graywell Movement. The name, Graywell, felt wrong, too constructed, too smooth. The attached invoices were a different story. They were a masterclass in vague corporate billing, mindful sourcing consultation, executive energy alignment, synergistic breathwork planning, all billed at a flat $9,500, just under the $10,000 automatic review threshold. Then I saw the big one, an invoice dated 2 weeks ago. Intensive meditation workshop, executive team. The line item charge, $22,000. It was triple the usual rate. I scrolled to the bottom of the invoice. It required a senior executive signature for any amount over $20,000. The digital approval was there, clean and sharp, approved via e-signature, Marla Merritt, acting CEO. She wasn't just his partner, she was his personal banker, using the company treasury. Now the unmasking. I highlighted Graywell Movement and opened a new browser tab. I navigated to the state's Secretary of State Business Entity Database. I pasted the name. The result popped up instantly. Entity name, Graywell Movement, LLC, status, active, good standing, date of formation, August 02, 2025. It was 3 months old. A ghost, a shell, freshly created just in time to receive our money. I clicked on the Registered Agent tab. The address listed wasn't a sleek wellness studio. It was 145B Commercial Way, Suite 212. A UPS store, a commercial mailbox. A company with no physical location, registered 3 months ago. I went back to the 28-page PDF. The most important document in any vendor packet is the most boring. The W-9 form, the request for taxpayer identification number. Dane Graywell had signed it, but the business classification was not LLC. He had checked the box for individual sole proprietor. This meant the taxpayer ID was not a corporate EIN, it was a social security number. And the name linked to that SSN, the legal name on line 1, was not Dane Graywell. It was Daniel Garver. The scalpel had made its first incision. Dane was a fiction, a marketing name. The man was Daniel Garver. I copied the new name. I opened our internal procurement database, a system I had full, legitimate audit access to as head of risk. I searched for Daniel Garver. No results. I searched Graywell Movement. One result. He had been onboarded under his fake name, a clear violation of IRS compliance and our own vendor policy. Marla had either approved this knowingly or had been criminally negligent. I took the real name, Daniel Garver, to the public internet. The first few results were noise, a LinkedIn profile for a benefits consultant that had been deleted, a few mentions on old corporate retreat pamphlets. Then, a news article from the Norwood County Gazette, dated 4 years ago. Synergy Benefits Consulting Faces. County lawsuit over overbilling. The article detailed how a consultant, Daniel Garver, had been accused of grossly overbilling the county for employee wellness services. My fingers flew across the keyboard. This was the scent. I left the news search and went to the Norwood County Superior Court portal. I searched the public dockets for Daniel Garver. A list of civil cases appeared. Most were minor, but one stood out. Norwood County versus Daniel Garver, case ID 21 CV 04489. The charge? Fraudulent invoicing and breach of contract. I clicked. The judgment was available as a PDF. He had a $250,000 contract with the County Parks Department to provide employee wellness kits. He had billed for, and been paid for, 5,000 kits. An audit found he had delivered only 500. It was pure, simple invoice fraud. The judgment was damning. He was ordered to pay restitution. And the final line? Mr. Daniel Garver is hereby debarred from bidding on or receiving any and all public contracts within Norwood County for a period of 3 years. The debarment period had ended just 4 months ago, right before Graywell Movement was born. He was a professional grifter. He wasn't a yoga instructor. He was a specialist in corporate fraud. And Marla hadn't just hired him. She had found him. She had sought out a specialist. The sickness in my stomach was cold and hard. This wasn't just a messy affair. This was a conspiracy. I went back to the invoice packet. I needed to tie Daniel Garver, the fraud, to Dane Graywell, the man in my apartment. I pulled up his most recent timesheet, which he had submitted just this morning to account for his work yesterday. The timesheet was required for all hourly wellness consultants. I stared at the entry for October 23rd. Project, Everline Wellness Week. Activity, on-site executive breathwork session. Clock in, 19:00. Clock out, 21:30. Total hours. Billed, 2.5. I cross-referenced my own evidence, my legal evidence. Item 006. Lock log. 3 CSV. Entry time at my apartment. 1914. Item 007. Camera log. P4. Exit time from my apartment. 21:02. He wasn't at the office. He wasn't conducting a breathwork session. He was in my bed, and he was billing Everline for it. This elevated everything. It was no longer just a conflict of interest. It was wire fraud. He was submitting fraudulent timesheets, which Marla was approving, all through our interstate payroll and invoicing systems. The layers were peeling back, and the core was rotten. I needed to see the communication. This was the most critical step. I could not, under any circumstances, access Marla's private email. That was a firing offense. That was illegal. But I didn't have to. As head of ethics and risk, I had administrative oversight of all shared corporate resources for the purpose of auditing. This included the Wellness Week at Everline.com inbox, I had already been in there to find the Uber receipt. I went back to that inbox. I searched for emails from Dane at Graywell Movement, com. There were dozens. Logistics, scheduling. And then I saw it. An email from 2 months ago, when the partnership was just beginning. It was sent from Dane Daniel to Marla's personal Gmail address. But he had made a mistake. He had accidentally CC'd the Wellness Week at Everline.com shared inbox. He had exposed himself. The subject? Monthly retainer. The body was short. Marla, the first 2 invoices cleared the system. Looks like we are good to go. Per our discussion, I've attached the new retainer agreement for 25 Clash month. I'll send the separate thank you commission, 15%, to the account you specified as soon as the wire hits. See you soon, D. My breath caught. It wasn't just overbilling. It was a kickback scheme. He was laundering the money back to her. He would overbill for $25,000, and when he got paid, he would secretly send $3,750 of our money to her private account. This email was the probable cause I needed. This was the key. This single email, legally obtained from a corporate inbox I managed, gave me the full authority under Ethics Policy 7.2, suspicion of financial fraud, to audit all communications between the flagged vendor, Dane at graywellmovement.com, and the approving employee, Merritt at everline.com. I opened the company's internal Microsoft Teams IM log viewer. I had to enter a justification for the audit. I typed, auditing communications related to Case 771 EWG, whistleblower report, and supporting evidence of a financial kickback scheme. See email 082925 from vendor. I hit enter. The system processed the request. I was in. I filtered the logs for the last 48 hours. The night before the assault, the messages were cold, practical, chilling. M. Merritt, 10/22, 15:30. Use the Norford address tonight. The guest code for the apartment is 1914. D. Garver, 10/22, 15:32. The stepdaughter? She won't be there? Merritt, 10/22, 15:32. Ava's in Chicago. She doesn't get back until tomorrow night. The place is empty. Merritt, 10/22, 15:33. Just don't turn on the outside light in the hall. Use the reading light in the bedroom. My hands were perfectly still on the keyboard. It was not a crime of passion. It was not a mistake. It was a premeditated rendezvous, planned on company time, using company assets, to facilitate a conspiracy. This was never about yoga. This was never about wellness. This was embezzlement. Marla had found a professional grifter, Daniel Garver, a man already banned from public contracts for fraud. She gave him a new name, Dane Graywell, and a shell company. She brought him into Everline, bypassed all procurement controls, and used her CEO authority to approve his fraudulent, massively inflated invoices. He, in turn, submitted timesheets for work that was never performed, work that included sleeping in my bed, and then kicked back a percentage of the stolen money to her. It was a perfect, self-contained financial loop. It was clean. It was all digital. They could have drained millions before anyone noticed. But they got arrogant. And in their arrogance, they made one stupid, tangible mistake. They didn't just commit their fraud on paper. They brought it into the physical world. They brought it into my home. They left a hair tie. They left a lipstick stain. They left the scent of eucalyptus on a pillowcase. They left a chain of evidence that a digital audit could never find. They had given me physical proof. They had given me a motive. They had turned a white-collar crime into a personal one, and they had done it in my bed. The bruise on my face had ripened into a sickening, mottled constellation of purple, green, and yellow. It was a 48-hour timeline of the assault, written on my own skin. When I met with Mark Jessup, our CFO, I didn't hide it. I used it. I let it sit in the sterile conference room air between us, a silent testament to something being violently wrong at Everline. Mark is a man of spreadsheets, not emotions. He sees the world in black ink and red. I was counting on that. Mark, thank you for seeing me on such short notice, I began, my voice the same flat, professional tone I used in every risk briefing. Ava, that looks painful. He gestured vaguely at my face, uncomfortable. It's been a difficult week, I said, offering no explanation. Which is why I'm here. I'm finalizing my end-of-quarter risk report, and I found some significant fiscal inefficiencies in the Wellness Week budget. His focus sharpened. Inefficiencies? We have one vendor, Graywell Movement, who has been onboarded via a series of short-term retainers, all just shy of the board review threshold. The latest invoice was for $22,000, approved by the CEO's office. I slid a single summary sheet across the table. The vendor's entire fee structure is non-standard. I believe we're being overcharged, and I'm recommending a light, targeted audit to optimize costs before we close the quarter. I didn't say Marla. I didn't say fraud. I didn't say kickback. I used the language he understood. Optimize costs. He studied the sheet. He tapped his pen on the $22,000 line item. You're right. This is sloppy. I hate this kind of ad hoc spending. Marla's office has been a black box on this wellness budget. He looked at me, his eyes lingering on my cheek. You have my authorization. Do a full cost-benefit analysis. Find out what we're actually paying for. I want a report for the audit committee, just in case. Thank you, Mark. I'll be discreet. I know you will, he said. I had my shield. The audit was no longer my personal crusade. It was a formal directive from the chief financial officer. My first stop was building security. My new audit authority gave me access to the badge-in logs. I requested the full entry-exit data for vendor Dane Graywell for the past 3 months. The report was illuminating. He had never once used the front door vendor check-in system. He had never been issued a standard, printed vendor pass. His every entry was logged against a single, permanent visitor badge, Guest Pass 04. Issued by Office of the CEO. He was being treated not as a vendor, but as a personal guest of Marla. Bypassing every security protocol I had written, I added the log to my case file. Next, I turned to my own data. I downloaded the full biometric log from my Fitband. I isolated the night of the 23rd. The data was a perfect, unbiased witness. 2210. Heart rate stable. 62 BPM. Reading on plane. 2214. Heart rate. 78 BPM. Entry to apartment. 2238. Heart rate. 141 BPM. The confrontation. 2241. Heart rate. 128 BPM. Recording the voice memo. The spike was a vertical line, a biological scream in a sea of calm. It was a precise, time-stamped record of the exact moment I was assaulted. It corroborated my voice memo, the lock log, and the medical report. It was another layer of cold, hard data. With the CFO's audit authority, I now had the justification to look at the corporate resources used to facilitate this vendor. I opened the corporate Outlook calendar. I looked up Marla's schedule. It was littered with appointments. Breathwork was /DG. Planning session, DG. They were always in conference room 9C. This was a room I knew well. It was in the back of the building, a small, glass-walled box intended for one-on-one calls. I had passed it just yesterday. The frosted glass, usually transparent, had been covered from the inside with butcher paper. A do not disturb sign taped to the door. They weren't just meeting, they were hiding. I took a screenshot of the recurring calendar entries, another piece of the puzzle. Now, the legal framework. I sent a formal request to our general counsel, Peter Haas. I didn't mention Marla or Dane. I framed it as a routine policy review. Subject: Request for clarification. Policy 3.4. Conflict of interest. Peter, for my quarterly risk report, can you please clarify the board's standing on Policy 3.4, specifically the addendum regarding personal relationships with active vendors? I'm looking for the clause that requires a written disclosure to the audit committee. Can you confirm when this policy was last formally reviewed or enforced? Best, Ava Merritt Head, Ethics and Risk. This was the trap's legal spring. It forced legal to review the very policy Marla had violated, ensuring it was fresh in their minds when the evidence landed. Then, I followed the paper trail on the smaller items. The big invoices were fraudulent, but the petty ones were just as damning. I pulled the purchase orders for the Wellness Week supplies, yoga mats, branded water bottles, organic snacks, all sourced from a single new supplier, Zenith Provisions. A quick check showed Zenith was registered to the same UPS store mailbox as Graywell Movement. It was his other pocket. The invoices were staggering. He was charging us $90 per yoga mat. The market rate for a high-end mat, in bulk, was $40. I walked down to procurement. I didn't talk to the manager. I found the junior coordinator who had processed the PO. He was young, nervous. "Ava, I'm glad you're here. I did flag this," he whispered, gesturing to his screen. I told my manager the cost was double the market rate, but then I got a call from Marla's executive assistant. She said Ms. Merritt had personally approved the vendor, and to just sign it, I didn't know what to do. "You did the right thing by flagging it," I said, "and you're doing the right thing by telling me. Can you forward me that email chain?" He nodded, his relief palpable. "Right away." He was another witness. The email was more proof. Marla had been notified of the overbilling and had used her authority to push it through. I had all the internal pieces. It was time to escalate. I went home. I logged back into the anonymous Navex whistleblower portal. Case 771, EBOG. I clicked Upload Additional Information. I didn't upload everything. That would be messy. I uploaded the 5 most lethal documents. The kickback email, separate thank you commission, the fraudulent timesheet, billing for the 1900 to 2130 session, my apartment's lock log, proving he was at my home during that exact time, the Norwood County judgment, proving Daniel Garver's prior fraud conviction, the Zenith Provisions invoice, proving the overbilling and the second shell company. In the comment box, I wrote, "The attached provides irrefutable proof of a financial kickback scheme, wire fraud, and conspiracy between the acting CEO and a debarred vendor. This represents a material, existential threat to the company. I request immediate escalation to the full audit committee of the board of directors." I hit send. I didn't have to wait 48 hours. The response came in 20 minutes. It wasn't from a case manager. It was from the third-party firm's director. Case 771 EWG. This evidence is material and actionable. As per our client agreement with Everline Naturals, we are retaining the independent forensic accounting firm of Kroll & Associates to begin an immediate investigation. Their findings will be reported directly and exclusively to the chair of the audit committee. They will be in touch. The investigation was no longer mine. It was out of my hands. It was moving at a speed I couldn't control. There was one last piece, the one I dreaded. I had arranged it a week ago, before Chicago, before the bruise, a weekend fishing trip with my father, our old ritual. It was the only place he seemed to be able to listen. I picked him up Saturday morning. The sun was low, the air cold. I was wearing sunglasses, but the swelling on my cheek was still visible. He didn't comment on it. He just stared straight ahead. We drove to the reservoir, the silence heavy. We got in the boat. We cast our lines. The only sound was the thwip of the lures hitting the still, gray water. I waited, an hour, 2, finally. I reeled in my line. "Dad, I need to talk to you, not as your daughter, but as your head of risk." He didn't look at me. He just stared at the tip of his rod. "I know, Ava." "You don't?" I said, my voice quiet, but as cold as the air. "I'm not here to talk about Marla's affair." His head snapped toward me. "I'm here to talk about the embezzlement, the wire fraud, the man she's been funneling company money to, a man who was debarred for fraud in this county, a man she's been taking kickbacks from." I laid it out, the shell companies, the fake invoices, the fraudulent timesheets, the kickback email. I kept my voice a monotone. I presented it as a case study, a crack in the foundation of the company he built. I didn't show him the photos of my face. I didn't show him the lock log from my apartment. I didn't show him the voice memo. I didn't tell him how I had confirmed the timesheet was fraudulent. He didn't need to know, not yet. He needed to choose between his company and his wife. He sat there, pole in hand, for what felt like an eternity. The boat drifted. The sun was a weak disk behind the clouds. Finally, he spoke, his voice rough. When I brought her in, I thought she had the fire I'd lost. I thought she'd protect the company. He reeled in his line, the sound a slow, painful click. He looked at me. His eyes were clear. He had seen the truth in my data. "If this is real," he said, his voice firming, "if the data is clean, then let the board see it." He looked away, out at the water. "This is my fault. I let this happen. I didn't want to see." He turned back to me, his face set. "Let them see everything. It's the only way. Let the light in." I nodded. "Once. An independent firm is already on it. They report to the audit committee." "Good," he said. He picked up his oar. "It's time to go back." I started the engine. The light was coming, and it was going to burn. The emergency meeting of the audit committee was convened at 7:00 a.m. in the vault, a secure, windowless conference room on the 30th floor, accessible only with a specific keycard authorization. Executive assistants were not notified. The attendees were the 4 independent board members who comprised the committee, our general counsel, Peter Haas, and 2 stony-faced senior partners from Kroll & Associates, the external investigation firm. I was not invited. I didn't need to be. The investigators presented their preliminary findings. They did not speak of affairs or lies. They spoke in the cold, clear language of financial crime. They used terms like significant billing anomalies, systematic circumvention of procurement controls, and irrefutable evidence of a non-arm's-length relationship. They had moved faster than I could have imagined. They had subpoenaed the bank records for Graywell movement and Zenith provisions. They presented a flowchart of their own. It showed $312,000 flowing out of Everline over 90 days into the 2 shell companies. It then showed $46,800, a clean 15%, flowing from those accounts into a high-yield savings account in Delaware, registered to Marla. The kickback email, separate thank you commission, was displayed on the screen. The fraud was no longer a suspicion. It was a fact. Peter Haas, our general counsel, called me at 09:15, immediately following the meeting. His voice was strained, the usual corporate smoothness gone, replaced by a tight, human anger. "Ava, the committee has seen the Kroll report. The financial case is, in their words, absolute. But I've been reviewing your original whistleblower submission, the one from Navex." He paused. I waited. "The time logs from your apartment," he said, his voice dropping. "They match the fraudulent timesheet for October 23rd, to the minute. This was the pivot. This was where the corporate crime and the personal one merged." "Peter," I said, my voice steady, "the financial case is only half of it. I am independently submitting a separate file to you and the board. This file is not about the money. It's about the direct physical threat that occurred as a direct result of this conspiracy. It's about what happened when I uncovered it." I emailed him the password to the encrypted zip file I had labeled Hayes 3. Internal. "I advise you to review it immediately," I said. "It contains the full, time-stamped medical report from the urgent care, the photographs of my face, the digital recording of my official statement made at 22:41, and the screenshot of the text message from Marla admitting her yoga instructor just slept there." The silence on the line was profound. It was the sound of a lawyer recalculating. He was no longer just a general counsel dealing with fraud. He was an officer of the court, now aware of a violent felony committed by the acting CEO against the primary whistleblower. "My God, Ava," he whispered, "the liability, as your general counsel, and frankly, as a human being, my advice is that you file for a temporary protective order, immediately, today, We have a material, violent threat inside this company. I've already filled out the forms, I said. I drove to the Norfolk County Courthouse on my lunch break. The bruise on my face was my Exhibit A, a grotesque, yellowing shadow that spoke more loudly than any affidavit. I stood before a domestic violence judge. I presented the signed medical report, the lock log from my apartment, and the text message from Marla. The judge didn't hesitate. The temporary protective order was granted. Marla Merritt was legally barred from coming within 100 yards of me, my home, or my place of work. She was to be served the papers by a sheriff's deputy. I emailed a scanned copy of the signed order to Peter Haas. The TPO was the accelerant. The audit committee reconvened at 1400. The votes were unanimous. The motion swift. Motion 1. Retain external. Independent counsel. A white shoe law firm in New York that specialized in corporate malfeasance was engaged, effective immediately. Our internal legal team was now officially conflicted. Motion 2. Freeze all payments. All accounts payable associated with Graywell Movement and Zenith provisions were locked. Motion 3. Activate full whistleblower protections for me. 2 hours later, a formal, signed letter was delivered to my desk from the chairman of the board. It was, in equal parts, a shield for me and a legal defense for the company. It cited, by name, SEC, Rule 21F, and the Dodd-Frank Act, the federal laws that protect whistleblowers from any form of retaliation. It explicitly stated that any attempt to demote, harass, or terminate my employment would be considered a federal crime. I was, for the moment, the most legally protected person at Everline Naturals. The irony was that while the board was building a legal fortress around me, Marla was oblivious. She was in the main atrium, tasting organic smoothies for the Wellness Town Hall. This town hall was her baby, scheduled for Friday. It was to be the capstone of her wellness week, a celebration of her innovative leadership, and the keynote speaker, the man she was going to honor on stage in front of 3,000 employees, was Dane Graywell. I saw the draft agenda. She was planning to use the event to announce a new, expanded 5-year contract for the Graywell movement. She was going to celebrate her co-conspirator. The board was moving with legal precision, building its case for a for-cause termination, but they were moving too slowly. I could not let that town hall happen. Not her way. I used my authority as head of risk. I walked to the communications department. Hi, Jen. Mark Jessup and I have finalized our Q3 cost-benefit analysis. We have some significant findings on the wellness budget that we need to present to the company. We need to add a 5-minute segment to the town hall on Friday for a budget transparency update. It's a new risk protocol. The comms director, blissfully unaware of the tsunami approaching, just nodded. Of course, Ava, that's a great idea. We'll put you on right after Marla's introduction of the wellness team. The trap was set. An email went out to the entire company an hour later. Join us this Friday for the Wellness Town Hall, featuring a special keynote from Dane Graywell and a new presentation on wellness budget transparency from our head of risk, Ava Merritt. The event would be live-streamed. There was no backing out. The night before the town hall was the longest of my life. The board was now moving at my pace. The external counsel was vetting every word of my presentation. They were terrified of a defamation suit. They were terrified of the TPO being violated. They were terrified of Marla. My phone rang. The clock on my nightstand read 01:12. It was my father. His voice was gravel, thick with a lack of sleep. I just got off a call with the external counsel. They showed me your file, the other file. He meant the assault, the medical report, the TPO. I saw the pictures. Ava, he choked out. I failed. I failed to protect you, in my own company, in your own home. I said nothing. Tomorrow, he said, his voice changing, hardening with a cold fury I hadn't heard in years. Tomorrow, you will be attacked. She will say you are hysterical. She will say this is a personal vendetta from a jealous stepdaughter. Do not let her. He took a sharp breath. Show them the numbers first. The cold, hard, undeniable numbers, emotions second. Do you understand me? Show them the spreadsheet. Then show them the bruise. He hung up. Numbers first, emotions second. I sat up. I deleted the 10-slide deck I had been working on. It was too complex. Too much data. It was weak. I needed one slide, a single, brutal chart. I opened a blank presentation. I created a simple flow chart. A large box on the left. Everline Naturals Treasury. Approved by M. Merritt. A thick black arrow pointing to two boxes in the middle. Graywell Movement, Shell LLC, and Zenith Provisions, Shell LLC. From those boxes, another arrow pointed to one name, Daniel Garver, debarred vendor. And from Garver, a final, dotted red arrow, pointing back to a new box, M. Merritt, private offshore account. I titled the slide, The Wellness Week Cash Flow. That was the numbers. I created one final slide, a blank, white screen. In the center, in clean, black, 48-point font, I typed the quote I had written in my head. No yoga can steady a hand built on fraud. I saved the file. Town Hall, Final, PPTX. I was ready to turn on the lights. The control room was a dark, refrigerated box of exposed wiring and glowing screens, perched 3 stories above the main atrium stage. It smelled of hot plastic, dust, and stale coffee. Below us, the auditorium was filling. The sound of 3,000 employees settling into their seats was a low, dull roar, like the ocean from a great distance. I wasn't in the green room with Marla and her keynote speaker. I was here, in the technical nerve center, surrounded by lawyers. Mr. Graves, the external counsel from New York, stood behind me, arms crossed. He was a tall man in an immaculate suit, and he looked profoundly out of place. Test the audio. Ms. Merritt, level check. I leaned into the broadcast microphone, my eyes on the audio tech. Testing, 1, 2, 3. We will be adhering strictly to the script. We will only show the documents that have been legally okayed. My voice was a flat, cold monotone. It sounded dead in the small room. The tech gave me a thumbs up. Levels are perfect, ma'am. Graves nodded, satisfied. Good. This was not a presentation. It was a military campaign. And this was the command bunker. To my left, 2 forensic accountants from Kroll were hunched over a laptop. They weren't using the Everline network, a system I now considered compromised. They had brought their own private, air-gapped video server. My risk analyst, Ben, was sitting with them, his face pale. The redactions are complete, Ben said, his voice a low tremor. The offshore account number is blacked out. Garver's social security number is blacked out. All sensitive PII is fully obscured. We're showing the flow, not the details. It's legally clean, Graves confirmed. It presents a case of gross financial mismanagement and breach of fiduciary duty. That is all we are here to do. I knew we were here to do more. At the back of the room, standing by the only door, was the new head of corporate security, a man named Heller, hired by the board 2 days ago. He was briefing his team, 2 men in unremarkable suits who were not, in fact, on the Everline payroll. They were off-duty Norford officers, contracted for this event. Heller's voice was low, but it cut through the hum of the servers. The layout is as follows. We have 2 men, here and here. He pointed to a schematic of the atrium. Covering the exits, Ms. Merritt has a clear exit path from the stage to the service elevator. Here, our primary objective is whistleblower protection. I don't care about the stage. I don't care about the CEO. I care about her. He jabbed a thumb in my direction. If there is any scuffle, any attempt to approach Ms. Merritt by either Marla Merritt or Daniel Garver, you are to prioritize the asset. This is a non-contact order. He tapped a copy of my TPO. We are authorized to enforce it. The secondary objective is the data. At no point does that private server or the laptop containing the primary files leave this room. Understood? The men nodded. My protection was not for my safety. It was for the integrity of the board's case. I was the central witness. I was the asset. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady. The bright screen illuminated my face, catching the grotesque yellow-purple of the bruise, which was now in its final, ugliest stage. I opened a text to my father. He was in the front row, per the board's request, a sign of stability. I typed, "I will speak for exactly 92 seconds, not 1 second more." It was the time I had calculated, 45 seconds for the financial slide, 45 seconds for the implication, 2 seconds for the closing. The reply came back almost instantly. 90 is enough. Get it done. I put the phone away. That was the validation I needed. The founder, the man who built this company, had just given the order. Ava? It was Ben, my analyst. He was holding a small, blue, instant cold pack. He gestured awkwardly at my face. For your, before you go on, it might take the swelling down. He was being kind. He was one of the good ones. He saw a victim. I looked at the ice pack in his hand, then back at his face. No, Ben, thank you. I'm not covering it up. I turned away, putting the ice pack he'd offered on the console. The bruise was my uniform. It was Exhibit B. Mr. Graves stepped in front of me, blocking my view of the stage monitor. His eyes were intense. Ms. Merritt, Ava, a final word. I am your counsel, and I am the board's counsel. You are about to walk into a legal minefield. You must not deviate from the script. I understand, I said. You will not, he emphasized. Comment on her personal life. You will not mention your apartment. You will not mention the assault. If she attacks you, you will not respond in kind. You are a compliance officer presenting a fiscal report. You stick to the contracts. You stick to the invoices. You stick to the policy. The paper is your sword and your shield. Let it do the work. Am I clear? Abundantly. He stared at me for another second, searching my face. Good, because she will try to make this about emotion. You will make it about math. I nodded. He stepped aside. I turned back to the monitors. I rehearsed my opening line in my head, the words I had practiced in the shower, in the car, in the elevator. We all love wellness. It's a core part of our brand, but we do not love fake invoices. It was simple. It was clean. It was an attack vector aimed at the budget, not the person. It was defensible. It was perfect. Slide deck is triple-checked, the AV tech called out. It's loaded onto the secure playback machine. We're bypassing the house system entirely. Good, I said. And the audio? As requested, the house music playlist for the walk-on has been deleted. The podium mic is live, and the room audio will be silent until you begin speaking. The upbeat, pop-driven playlist that Marla had personally curated would not be playing. There would be no fanfare, just silence. I slipped my right hand into the pocket of my blazer. My fingers brushed against the sharp, crisp corner of the legal-sized envelope I had placed there that morning. It was a certified copy of the temporary protective order. It was a legal grenade. If Marla, in her rage, decided to approach me on that stage, if she breached the 100-yard limit stipulated by the court, I wouldn't even have to say anything. I would just hand the envelope to Heller, and the entire event would stop. It was my insurance policy. On the main monitor, I saw the house lights in the atrium dim. A single, bright white spotlight hit the center of the stage, illuminating the podium. The crowd of 3,000 employees hushed. The show was starting. I caught my reflection in the dark glass of the monitor next to me. The harsh light from the console lit my face from below. The bruise was a shadow, a hollowed-out landscape of past trauma, but my eyes were clear. My mouth was a firm, straight line. When the test light from the stage spilled into the control room, catching my face, I did not blink. My expression was as calm, as flat, and as sharp as a whetstone. I was ready to draw blood. Marla walked onto the stage to the bright, optimistic swell of the corporate anthem. The lights hit her, and she was radiant. She was wearing a power white dress, her smile a high-wattage beam. She was the picture of the modern CEO, confident, beautiful, and utterly in control. She glided to the podium. "Good morning, Everline," she projected, her voice filling the vast atrium. "What a week of wellness. It has been my absolute joy to bring these new initiatives to our family, but we are not done. It is my distinct honor to introduce a true partner, a visionary in corporate and personal well-being. Please, a warm Everline welcome for our keynote speaker, Dane Graywell." The applause was thin, scattered, a polite, confused ripple from the 3,000 employees. Dane walked out. He was dressed in an expensive, unstructured linen suit, his hair artfully messy. He flashed a brilliant white smile at Marla, who looked at him with an unguarded, proprietary pride. He waved to the crowd. He approached the podium, ready to speak. "Before Mr. Graywell begins," a voice said, clear and cold, cutting through the PA system. My voice. From the stage right wing, I emerged. The comms director, following her new script, had given me the cue. I walked past Dane. I walked past Marla. Her smile faltered, a hairline crack appearing in the perfect mask. Her eyes narrowed. "Ava?" she hissed, off mic. I didn't look at her. I walked to the second, smaller podium set up for me. The follow spot operator, confused, divided the light, bathing both of us in a harsh white glare. The main broadcast cameras swung to me. My face, with its sickening yellow and purple bruise, was projected onto the 40-foot screens flanking the stage. A single, collective gasp sucked the air from the room. 3,000 people saw the truth on my skin. The live stream, carrying the feed to our satellite offices, carried my face to nearly 3,000 more. I reached the podium. I leaned into the microphone. "I am Ava Merritt, Head of Ethics and Risk. As part of a new mandatory transparency protocol, I require 90 seconds to review the cost-benefit analysis of Wellness Week." Marla was frozen. She was trapped. To deny me the time would be an admission of guilt. She stared at me, her face hardening, but she said nothing. I pulled the small, black clicker from my pocket. My hand was perfectly steady. I pressed the button. The massive screen behind Marla and Dane instantly changed. It was not a welcome graphic. It was my first slide. The flowchart. Everline Naturals Treasury. Approved M. Merritt. Graywell Movement. Shell LLC. Zenith Provisions. Shell LLC. Daniel Garver. Debarred Fraud Vendor. 15% kickback. M. Merritt. Private offshore account. My voice was clinical. It did not shake. "Good morning. We are here to discuss wellness. So let's begin with fiscal wellness. This chart details the payment flow for our primary wellness vendor." The crowd was dead silent. "In the last 90 days, I continued, my voice echoing, the acting CEO's office has approved $312,000 in payments to 2 shell companies, both registered to a UPS store mailbox. Both are solely owned by a Mr. Daniel Garver, a man previously convicted of and debarred for felony invoice fraud." A low, stunned murmur swept the room. Marla's face had gone sheet white. Dane was no longer smiling. "This is not," Marla started, but her mic wasn't live. Mine was. I clicked the button again. Slide 2. On the left, the scanned image of Dane's final fraudulent timesheet for 2.5 hours of executive breathwork. On the right, 2 screenshots. My Schlager Lock log, entry 1914, and my UFI camera log, exit 2102. The data was identical. The timestamps were a perfect match. "This is the vendor's final timesheet for a session billed on October 23rd, I said, my voice cutting through the silence. "And this is the corresponding system log from the same time period." I paused, letting the 3,000 people read the data. I let them do the math. Then, I delivered the line. My voice dropped, becoming personal for the first time. A vendor, approved by the acting CEO, was billing this company for executive meditation while he was, in fact, present inside my personal apartment, on that night. The silence that followed was a physical thing. It was absolute, heavy, and terrifying. Marla lunged. She grabbed her own podium's microphone, her hand shaking with rage. "This is a lie!" she screamed, her voice cracking, distorted by feedback. "This is a private fabrication. It's a personal vendetta from a sick, jealous girl. This is slander." I held my ground. I looked directly at her. I spoke calmly into my own mic. "We are not discussing private matters, Marla. We are only discussing the contracts. We are discussing the system logs." You, she was choking on her own fury. And then the screen flickered. It was not my slide. In the control room, the Kroll team had just taken the feed. The screen was now filled with a single, blown-up image. The email, the one from Dane at Graywell Movement, com to Marla's inbox, and the shared Wellness Week account. The words, "I'll send the separate thank you commission, 15%, were circled in bright, damning red. The kickback. The crowd didn't gasp. They roared. It was a single, unified sound of betrayal. The company had been stolen from. Marla saw it. She saw the email. She saw the proof of the kickback. She lost control. She didn't just scream. She howled, a raw, animal sound of pure, undiluted rage. She turned from her podium and lunged, not at the screen, but directly at me. "You bitch!" She never made it. Heller's two plainclothes officers, the men in the gray suits, moved with a speed that was not corporate. They were on the stage in 2 strides, forming a human wall between us. One of them held up a hand. "Ma'am, step back, now." Marla recoiled, her face contorted, ugly with hate. She was trapped. A new sound, a new voice. From the front row, my father. He was on his feet. He had grabbed a floor microphone from a stunned cameraman. His voice boomed through the atrium, overriding her, overriding the crowd. "Sit down, Marla." It was not a request. It was the voice of the founder. It was the voice of judgment. The energy vanished from her. It was as if her strings had been cut. She looked at him, her mouth open. She saw the cold, dead finality in his eyes. She had lost. While every eye was locked on the confrontation, Dane was moving. He had been edging backward, his face ashen. He saw the email. He saw the security. He saw my father. He turned and bolted, running off the stage, back into the dark wings. He shoved a tech aside. He sprinted down a short hallway, toward the red exit sign, the one that led to the service corridor. He slammed his shoulder into the crash bar. The door flew open. 2 men were standing in the concrete hallway, holding cups of coffee. The 2 Norford officers, waiting. "Daniel Garver?" the first one said, his voice casual. Dane panted, his eyes wide with panic. No, you're mistaken." "You fit the description," the second officer said, setting his coffee down. "We have an outstanding warrant for you from Norwood County, felony fraud, failure to pay restitution. It was just activated. Put your hands behind your back." Dane sagged against the wall. All the fight gone. The quiet, final click of the handcuffs echoed in the small hallway. Back on stage, the atrium was in chaos. People were standing, shouting, pointing. Heller was on his radio, speaking in code. 2 more security guards were calmly escorting a stunned, blank-eyed Marla off the far side of the stage. My father was walking toward me, his face a grim mask. I was the only still point in the storm. I stood at my podium, my hand still on the clicker. I looked down. Built into the podium was a small digital clock, the one the tech had set to count my 90 seconds. The red numbers were still running. 1:29. 89 seconds. I was 1 second under budget. The aftermath was not chaotic. It was ruthlessly efficient. While the atrium floor was still buzzing with the stunned, frantic energy of 3,000 employees, the governance committee of the board of directors was already convened in the 30th floor vault. This was not an audit committee meeting. This was the final judgment. I was not there. My father, as founder and board member, was the external counsel, Mr. Graves, presented the case. He didn't just show the fraud. He showed the TPO. He showed the high-resolution, time-stamped photographs of my face. The assault was the legal catalyst. The fraud was the financial justification. Together, they were an undeniable, existential threat to the corporation. The vote was instantaneous, unanimous. Motion 1. Marla Merritt is suspended as acting CEO and as an employee of Everline Naturals, effective immediately, for cause, pending termination. Motion 2. The complete Kroll investigative file, along with all evidence pertaining to assault, is to be transferred immediately to the Norwood County District Attorney's Office, with a formal request for criminal prosecution. Motion 3. All contracts with Graywell Movement and Zenith Provisions are terminated, voided due to fraudulent inducement. Motion 4. Counsel is directed to file an immediate civil complaint against both entities and Daniel Garver and Marla Merritt personally, seeking full restitution of all $312,000, plus damages. Motion 5. Counsel is directed to cooperate with the bank to freeze all associated shell company accounts, citing the ongoing criminal referral. The entire meeting took 12 minutes. While the board was voting, I was in the security office with Heller, giving a formal statement. I handed him the official, court-certified copy of the temporary protective order. "She's been served this morning," I said. "This is your copy. She is legally barred from this building as long as I am in it." "Her access has already been revoked," Heller said, tapping his keyboard. "Her corporate accounts are locked. Her key card is deactivated. Her company car has been disabled. She will be escorted to her condo by our team to retrieve only her personal effects, and she will not be permitted to enter the office again. You will not see her." He looked at my face, the bruise now a map of my victory. "My team will provide a 24-hour security detail at your apartment building until the DA files charges." "That won't be necessary," I said. "It's not a request, Ms. Merritt," he replied. "It's a board directive. You are the company's star witness." I heard the update on Dane before I left the office. The off-duty officers had transferred him to the custody of the Norwood PD. The old warrant was enough to hold him. The new formal complaint from Everline's external counsel, complete with evidence of wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy, was enough to ensure he wouldn't be leaving. The officer who cuffed him noted it in his report. The man. Dane Graywell. The picture of zen and confidence was shaking so violently he could barely get his hands behind his back. His linen suit was creased with sweat. The yoga instructor was gone. Only Daniel Garver, the failed con artist, remained. The company moved like a machine to excise the tumor. The bank, presented with the board's evidence of fraud, froze the shell accounts by 3:00 p.m. The $46,800 kickback, sitting in Marla's offshore account, was now the target of an international asset forfeiture claim. By 4 p.m., my father, reinstated by the board as interim CEO, signed the internal and external press release. It was a masterpiece of corporate law. Written by Graves, it didn't mention the affair, the assault, or the details. It was cold, clean, and final. Everline Naturals has concluded a swift and thorough internal investigation, which uncovered a sophisticated, coordinated effort by the former acting CEO and an external vendor to defraud the company. The individuals involved have been terminated. The matter has been referred to the District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. Everline is committed to the highest ethical standards. No one, at any level, is above the process. The process, my process. My inbox, which had been silent, exploded, not with gossip, not with questions, with support. From the junior procurement coordinator, "Thank you for listening. You turned on the lights." From my analyst, "Ben, I've never been prouder to be on a team. Thank you." From the head of HR, "Ava, thank you." A flood of single-line messages from people I barely knew, all echoing the same sentiment. "Thank you for turning on the lights." I sat in my office, the source of the entire corporate earthquake, and felt nothing. The adrenaline was gone, the cold. Precise anger had burned itself out, leaving only ash. The investigation was over. The case was built. The truth was out. I looked at my desk, at my risk matrices, my compliance charts, my whistleblower protocols. I had done my job, and I never wanted to do it here again. I had protected the company. But it was the company that had put me in harm's way. It was the company my father had allowed to fester. It was the company where my stepmother felt empowered to strike me in my own home, to silence me, to use my bed as a prop in her crime. I didn't want to stay and count the ashes. I opened a new document. I typed my resignation. I gave them 30 days, a professional courtesy. I cited my intention to pursue a new opportunity and wished the company well in its renewed commitment to ethics. I sent it to my father, to the board, and to HR. I shut my laptop. I had security escort me home, past the news van already parked out front of the Norford. I went up to my apartment. It was clean. The sheets had been changed. The glass from the nightstand was long gone, but the air was still wrong. I packed a bag. I wouldn't be sleeping here tonight. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, a New York exchange. "Is this Ava Merritt?" A woman's voice, sharp and fast. "It is. My name is Julia Reyes. I'm a managing partner at the Ares Investment Group. You don't know me, but I'm an independent director on the board of 3 different Fortune 500s. I just got a call from a friend at Everline's external counsel. He told me what you did." I waited. "I've seen your work before," she continued. "The whistleblower system you built at Everline is a model I've used in 2 other companies. What you did today, that wasn't just compliance. That was a hostile takeover, executed by one person, with a single slide deck." "I'm not sure I'd call it that," I said. "I would," she said, laughing a dry, quick laugh. "I read the press release. No one is above the process. That was you. You're leaving, aren't you?" "I've already submitted my resignation." "Good. Don't stay and clean up their mess. Let them pay you to do it from the outside." "I want to have dinner." "I'm sorry?" "Dinner. Tomorrow night. I'm flying in. I've wanted to spin up a boutique ethics and risk consultancy for years. One that isn't just a sleepy arm of a Big 4 accounting firm, a firm with teeth, a firm that builds the process and isn't afraid to enforce it. I have the money. You have the methodology. And now, you have the reputation." She paused. "Ares Group will be your first client. We'll put you on retainer to audit our entire portfolio. Yes or no?" I looked around the apartment. At the bed I would never sleep in again. At the walls that had heard the confrontation. At the door that had logged the crime. This place was contaminated. It was part of a story that was now over. Marla and Dane had tried to silence me. They had tried to trap me in a messy, private family drama, but I had used the light. I had used the process. "I don't need this apartment anymore," I said, almost to myself. "What was that?" Julia asked. "I need a clean space," I said, my voice firming, the fog of exhaustion lifting, replaced by a new, cold clarity. "A clean space. For the truth. Then we have a deal," she said. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Yes, we have a deal." I stepped out of the service elevator and into the concrete chill of the parking garage. The air was still, heavy with the smell of cold rubber and exhaust. The late afternoon sky, visible through the garage's opening, was a flat, unforgiving sheet of gray metal. It was over. The atrium I had left behind was still a mess of frantic energy, of executives in huddled conversations, of security guards at the doors, but out here, there was only silence. I walked toward my car, my footsteps the only sound, echoing off the low ceiling. "Ava?" I stopped. My father was standing by a support pillar. His trench coat pulled tight. He looked 10 years older than he had that morning. The adrenaline was gone, leaving him stooped. The weight of his creation settled back on his shoulders. He walked over to me, his shoes scraping on the grit. He didn't try to hug me. He didn't offer apologies. He just looked at my face, at the bruise, his eyes tracing its ugly, faded outline. He stopped a few feet from me. "I saw," he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. "I saw I saw everything." I looked back at him, my expression unreadable. "I know. I just turned on the lights. Dad, you had a dark room." He nodded, a jerky, painful motion. He accepted it. "The board. They've asked me to stay on, to fix it." "You should," I said. "It was not forgiveness. It was a statement of fact. It's your process to clean up." He watched me as I pulled my keys from my pocket. "Ava, your resignation." "It stands," I said. "It's effective in 29 days. I turned and walked away, leaving him by the pillar. I didn't wait for a reply. As I reached my car, I caught my reflection in the dark. Tinted glass of the driver's side window. The overhead garage lights were harsh. My face was pale, drawn, but my eyes were clear. The bruise was no longer the angry red and purple of the assault. It had faded to a pale, yellowish green, a sickly smudge of ink that was already being reabsorbed, disappearing back into my system. It was almost gone. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A new email. I pulled it out. The subject line was from the state of Delaware, Division of Corporations. Confirmation. The formation of Merit Ethics and Risk, LLC, is complete. I read the words. Julia Reyes, the investor, had moved as fast as I did. I looked up, back across the garage. My father was already gone. I looked toward the glass doors of the elevator lobby, which led back into the building, back to the stage that was still hot with the day's drama, back to the company I had saved and gutted in the same 89 seconds. I didn't look back. The story was over. I got into my car and shut the door, the solid thud sealing me in. The silence was perfect. I sat there for a long moment. Then, I took one deep, slow breath. It was clean. It was sterile. It was just air. There was no scent of lavender, no sandalwood, and no strange, invasive smell of eucalyptus. It was the first clean breath I'd taken in my own space in days. I turned on the car. Before I put it in reverse, I opened my phone one last time. I navigated to the Everline internal corporate blog. My admin access was still active. I clicked New Post. I typed one sentence. The audience was 5,000 employees. The title was, A Final Note on Wellness. The body was, Transparency is the only wellness that works. I hit publish. I put the phone down, put the car in reverse, and drove out of the garage, not once checking the rearview mirror. The screen went to black. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. So drop your city or country in the comments below so we can connect. Let me know your thoughts on Ava's journey. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, like this video, and give it a hype by pressing the button to help this story reach more listeners.